Hey everyone, welcome to the Search Engine Journal show. But wait a minute. Loren, aren't you usually the one who says that?
I am, but
Oh my
today
god.
I'm a guest.
Do you want to welcome everybody to this very special episode of the Search Engine Journal show?
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this special episode of the SEJ show. We're going to be talking about this being the 20th anniversary of Search Engine Journal.
Hi everyone, welcome again from me. I get to say it twice because today we are flipping the tables and I, Amanda Zantel-Weiner, I'm the editor-in-chief of SEJ, get to put Loren Baker, our esteemed founder, in the hot seat and talk to him about 20 years of SEO and SEJ. Happy anniversary, Loren.
Thank you. I can't believe it's been 20 years.
I can't believe it either. You know what? It's funny because today is actually my parents' 49th wedding anniversary.
Oh, nice.
Good yeah, so it's just anniversaries all around. But yeah, you excited to answer lots of questions instead of asking them?
I'm super excited.
Awesome.
I like being on this side of the things, so let's go.
All right, cool. Well, man, 20 years. I think I have like a t-shirt that's 20 years old. But I gotta ask, 2 decades ago, why the heck did you start the Search Engine Journal? What was your vision at the time? Did you even have a vision at the time?
No, I didn't. Well, kind of. So I got started in SEO in 1999, 1990, 1998, 1999. Basically as a necessities. This small little agency I was interning for while I was in college, they ended up selling a SEO package and didn't know how to do it. So I'm like, okay, I'll be the one. Well, actually, I was assigned by my boss since I was the only employee. And she's like, okay, you go figure out how to do this SEO package that we just sold. So I'm like, great, I'll do it. So that's how I got into SEO, trying to rank for all the different search engines at the time. And there was plenty of them that are not around anymore. Lycos, Excite, Alta Vista, et cetera, et cetera. And what's that?
My favorite was Ask Jeeves.
Yes. Ask Jeeves. And then there were a lot of directories too. So a lot of the search engines, they were like their index and the way they identified quality and categorization was based on directories. So the first was DMOZ, and Google used that as its core early on. And then also like LookSmart had a directory. Go.com, which was Disney's search engine at the time, had a directory. So a lot of SEO at the time was like not only on-site SEO and technical SEO content, but then also making sure that you're listed at the top of these directories, which would be at the top of the SERPs as well. So anyway, I was in SEO from 98 till about 2000. In 2000, 2001, I decided to quit my job in SEO. And I went to go teach English, living in Japan for 2 years. So during that 2-year period, I didn't really do much in terms of SEO. Like I would still get on a computer sometimes, and the first thing I would do was like search for like my keywords that I had been optimizing sites for previously to see if they're still ranking. And I kept in touch with some people, but I was pretty out of it for 2 years. And that period between 2001, 2002 was really the big time of growth, especially Google, because Google wasn't even a player at all. So after taking 2 years off, I ended up moving from Japan to Brazil to go pursue my to go travel and everything else, and then also get paid teaching English. Little did I know when I got to Brazil, as opposed to making a pretty decent salary living in Japan, I was going to get paid $2 an hour, $3 an hour to teach English there. I'm like, I don't really feel like, doing this. So I contacted my old boss and I'm like, hey, do you have any work that needs to be done? Can I work for you as a contractor? And she's like, yeah, I have all of this stuff you can do. Here it is. And then I'm like, well, I haven't done this in 2 years. A lot's changed. So I found that what I was doing was I was participating in a lot of forums, like asking and answering questions and things like that. And then at the same time, Google bought Blogger. And previous to Blogger, Typepad, and WordPress, which was B2 Cafe at the time, launching, you had to like set up a website, on a server. You had to code everything yourself. You had to push everything live, and it just took a long time. I got in the Blogger and I'm like, wow, I can set up my own blog instantly about SEO. And instead of contributing to all of these different forums and other sites, I can take those same ideas and write them myself. So what I did was I went to a domain registrar at the time. I searched for search engine blog. It was taken. So I'm like, oh, what else could it be called? And at the time, there was like a discussion whether blogs were going to be called blogs for web blogs or web journals, right? So I'm like, hey, how about search engine journal? And it was available. And I'm like, journal, that's great. It sounds like the Wall Street Journal. It sounds like a medical or college journal. It has instant authority. I'm going to go ahead and buy it. So I bought it, set up the Blogspot blog at searchenginejournal.blogspot.com, and then just started writing and blogging. Yeah.
Oh, man. Okay. And wow, that's an interesting strategy. I mean, would you go so far as to say maybe you were the first?
We were the first, I'd say, commercial SEO blog. There was Search Engine Watch at the time, which was more of a news site, but that didn't become a blog until years later. So yeah, and then Search Engine Roundtable launched after SEJ. There may have been other SEO blogs out there, but we were definitely the first like commercial SEO blog. So pretty cool to see.
Wow. So, I mean, I think that story and just hearing about your journey, which by the way, I had no idea you had spent that time internationally. That's a fun thing that I've learned about you. I mostly just knew about your tattoos and your love of the Orioles. But these are very fun facts as well. But I think that you just kind of like taking us through that journey of how, you landed on finding or founding the Search Engine Journal just goes to show that there has been a lot of change and evolution to the whole concept of a search engine and of finding information on this here interwebs. And so I have to ask, what is the highest impact or most important change you've seen to this whole concept of search engines and how to optimize for them since you launched SEJ?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I'd say one of the most impactful things, like, was, well, starting out with Google, was Google utilizing links to be able to judge the authority and relevance of a site, right? And that's changed so much over time, but it's still an important factor, especially like with discovering sites, this and that. People don't link like they used to. Everyone uses social media now. Everyone shares things there, so it's harder to get. But Google utilizing links was huge. And then on top of that, of course, once Google said that they were utilizing links, and they had this thing called PageRank that would judge the links, and SEOs figured out, hey, if you got a link from a PageRank 8 site to a PageRank 7 site, that would help you. In Google, they basically Google started a marketplace for linking, link buying, link acquisition, whatever you want to call it. And I would say like one of the biggest updates was the original Penguin update that penalized a lot of sites that had been buying trash links from sites that didn't exist or sites that people didn't read, right? So,
Right.
And that really started the crackdown on the link buying market, at least the open link buying market. I would also say the inclusion of content, speaking of Ask Jeeves, they were the first to really put together like a rich search oriented environment where it wasn't just 10 blue links anymore on the page, but it was information about what you were searching for, personalized search information, things like that. So once things got to be personalized, it changed. One of the largest changes in Google, which like rolled out around 2000, around 2012, 2010 to 2012, was the localization of SERPs as well. So one thing we would find is that if this kind of happened over the course of a month or two, if you searched in California for a term like car insurance, and then if you searched in Maryland for a term like car insurance, you would start to get different results based upon where you were. That didn't exist beforehand. Now it's extremely localized. If I search for just a word like car insurance, I'm going to get every single like car insurance agent or whatever in my town, and then I'm going to get Geico, and then I'm going to get some online offerings and maybe the General or something like that. But it's so hyper targeted now compared to what it used to be. You used to just get a list of every single homepage of a car insurance company, then you have to find information. So the localization component became huge because it meant that not only did local businesses get more, just get more visibility within Google, but it also meant that even if you're not a local brick and mortar, wherever you're competing against you're competing against local competition. So that really changed the game a lot in terms of like building out just geographic folders on sites and things like that, like state, city, to be able to rank in those areas. So that was huge as well. So just like Google rolling all of that out, starting to penalize things like link buying, Google rolling out a better user experience really changed things from an overall, I would say, search strategy perspective.
Yeah. It's interesting because you started off your answer with a mention of social media and how social media has changed things
Mhm.
in terms of how people search and discover information and content. And, it was not that long ago that I remember seeing, certain publications and certain industry leaders, one could say, refer to social platforms and social channels as search engines. So, YouTube was what, the third largest or third most used search engine at a point not too long ago. It might still be. It was saying that people were saying Twitter was a significant search engine. TikTok is now said to be heavily used as a search engine as well. So how has that significantly impacted how you think about SEO or optimizing for searching for the search and discoverability of information?
So, like, first of all, that whole mindset is really one thing that I think differentiated SEJ from other SEO publications at the time is that I see search as the thing that connects everything on the web, right? And yes, I see Facebook as a search engine. I see this as a search engine. I see that as a search engine. People people don't necessarily have to go to something that has a search box, type in a keyword to find information, right? Yet
Mhm.
at the same time, almost every site has a search capability. Almost every social network has a capability. So I think that mindset that, hey, we can cover what's going on at Facebook or at Twitter or whatever because of the search functionality behind it was huge. And then at the same time, yeah, you're right. Like YouTube is like second, third biggest search engine in the world, right? And I don't think it's necessarily thought of that way. I think YouTube is one of those things. It's not necessarily a search engine. It's not necessarily social media. It's somewhere in between.
Mhm.
But taking that mindset and just covering, YouTube news, YouTube happenings, things like that, I think is huge. And people are always going to change the way that they, first of all, digest information. Like everything is reels now. We were talking about this morning. I don't post anything on Instagram hardly anymore, just pictures of my kid, stuff like that. But what I will sit there and watch reels for a good hour when I intended to just like brain floss for 5 minutes. And that hour is gone. And I've learned so much information and like everything's super targeted to me now based upon trends and stuff like that. So that component of it is really interesting.
Did you say brain floss?
Brain floss. Yeah.
I have never heard that before.
Yeah, so like decompressing, like just flossing out all of the plaque from my brain for a while and just letting it rest.
I mean, Loren, I love you, man. But if you think of flossing as a decompressing activity, then we might need to examine your definition of fun and relaxation.
There you go.
But that's that's the 21st anniversary episode,
Yeah,
actually.
when
That's
Essie
next.
was old enough to drink.
Yes. Perfect. So, um, going back to grown-up topics now,
Mhm.
you were talking about how something that has differentiated from your POV, something that has differentiated SEJ, from very early on. And you've made some smart moves, um, I would say, in the course of the past 2 decades. And so, what do you think? Well, what would you say was the smartest thing you did to grow SEJ to the point, where it's at now? What would you attribute to it lasting as long as it has during, this period of, public publishing has seen so many peaks and valleys?
Yeah. Well, I would say there's been three major things. Like the first is uh our main I guess when I launched SEJ, the main competitor at the time was Search Engine Watch, right? And it was a site run by journalists. Danny Sullivan. He was a journalist before he started that. You know, a lot of the staff had a background in journalism. A lot of the writers had a background in journalism. Greg Sterling, he was on Tech TV early on. He was a tech journalist. Everything else. I took a different approach. I was never a journalist, and being a blogger gave me the opportunity to not worry as much about grammar and things like that, just like really getting the information out there. And then also I took the approach from writing as a marketer, right? So whenever I would cover a news story or something that was happening, like say Yahoo was launching Yahoo Answers, or I don't know, whatever's happening, Google has a big announcement. The big thing I would do naturally when I was writing was I would do maybe a recap, or in the post, what does this mean for marketers? How can you apply this to your SEO campaign? How can you apply this to what you're doing on a daily basis? And I didn't really realize that until I attended my first SEO conference, which were these huge conventions they used to have at the time and trade shows. And people would say, they would tell me, I enjoy reading SEJ because you're a marketer and you're writing from the perspective of an SEO or a paid search marketer, and you're giving me a way to apply this, right? Even if it's not necessarily like, hey, you should do this right now. Like, hey, you should keep an eye on this because Google's moving in this direction. Here's a way to stay ahead of the curve. And I think that was a really big differentiation point. Another was like adding things like this, experimenting, right? I think when you're into, I called SEJ a commercial blog before because of ad support. Like my first advertiser on SEJ, someone wrote me and they said they would pay me $35 a month to put a banner on the sidebar of SEJ. And I'm like, deal, let's do it. That lasted about 2 months. And then like you got more opportunities. But the great thing about being an independent blog, especially early on, was just the ability to experiment. And I think one thing that we've done very well is, in 2010, got together with Alpha Brand Media. So with Jenise Uehara and Brent Satoris, of course. And what we did was try to grow SEJ. But the one thing that I think we've kept that we still do, and you know this, Amanda, is that we're always experimenting. We're always looking for something new, a new way to put together information. And then now when we're experimenting with things like monetization. How do we launch a webinar? Let's do this, let's do that. And everything seems very polished right now. Like the whole team is doing such a great job with like the webinars and everything else. If you look back and how they started, it was like, we're turning it on, we're trying to figure it out, everything else. Like, so I would say like experimentation and like not being afraid. Well, it sounds cliche, but not being afraid to fail, like not being afraid to launch something and it doesn't work out, because you can always change it, whatever it may be. And I think we still have that mindset with everything that we do. And I think that's one reason why we're still around and we're the industry leader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting, because it's like people always, shout at kids, like, make good choices. And it's like, what are some of the bad choices that you think have like helped to, maintain success or have helped to ultimately, help you learn to make the right choices?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I think the bad choices have been, if I look back at some of the bad decisions that I made at SEJ, probably the worst one was giving people I didn't know very well authority to publish content for two reasons. One, I got a couple like emails from people at Google early on being like, hey, this is completely wrong, or how dare this person write this, or blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh my God, what did they write? And then I go back and I have to change it. So what that led to was putting together a sense of like needing an editor and review and fact checking and things like that. And the other thing were people were stinking in links, right? So they'd be writing an article about, SEO, and they'd be like, so if you're doing SEO for the payday loan industry, and they would link the payday loan link to their site or whatever. And that was something too that just like led to making sure that we have better governance over the content that we're putting out, because early on, I didn't realize what the influence was. It wasn't until years later that I realized that, hey, people are actually utilizing this information. Let's make sure it's correct,
Yeah.
100%. And then not just being correct, let's just make sure we're not offending anyone with what we're writing. And hey, let's make sure we use spell check so I don't get these emails from people saying, oh, you spelled this wrong, you spelled that wrong, everything else. So simple
Mhm.
things, but bad decisions that led to growth.
Mhm. Yeah, there's that editorial integrity piece of it, which, in my role is, I think about that
Mhm.
somewhat often. And I think that the idea of that upholding that editorial integrity, and you knew I was going to go here, Loren. You knew I was going to go to the AI topic, but AI is the whole idea of generative AI is bringing up a lot of questions and concerns about misinformation. And I think that among that backdrop, I'm personally very eager to know, and maybe I have my own answer to this question: is how do you think, sitting here 20 years later, how do you think SEJ is going to stay relevant?
Yeah. So, first of all, jumping on top of trends as they happen is key, right?
Mhm.
Um, Not getting lazy, making sure that, or not getting complacent in then where we are, what we're doing. And then I've heard for years, like, oh, how are you going to run an SEO? Well, when I started SEJ, I had the idea. Actually, I had contacted the person I was working for at the time, and with the idea of launching SEJ, and I asked her, I'm like, would you like to fund this, and then we can go halves in the future? Because I was writing her newsletter at the time and everything else. And then like she's like, oh no, there's so many SEO resources online. This would just be another one. I don't really feel comfortable doing this. I'm not sure if you'd be able to do it. And then I took that as like motivation, right? To
Yeah.
like make sure it happens. So like even now, like I have that voice in my head, like, oh, there's somebody out there not gonna be able to. And it's like that's the kind of thing that motivates me. And that motivation is a key to staying relevant as well. Like trying to stay ahead of the curve, being malleable and just being like, hey, look, AI, is this writing about AI and learning this, is this really SEO at the end of the day? What are the connections or paid search or whatever it may be? And then
Mhm.
also how do we bring it back in? So we're putting together resourceful information because we just don't want to be writing about anything that happens. We want to bring it back to the core of being like, how does this help you as a marketer? Right. And if we can do that, I think we can definitely always stay ahead of the curve. And then also like having, I would say our team helps us stay relevant because we have domain experts in almost everything, right? PPC, news, SEO, everything else. So making sure that like having like I've done this for 20 years. I don't write anymore. I barely respond to things in Asana. Like we talked about before the show. But I like doing the podcast, and I also like I've blogged too much. So like having a team that's on top of stuff, like your team and everything else, that's like just
Mhm.
trying to stay ahead of the game and scaling that out is just one way to stay relevant. And again, bending when you need to, trying to figure out where things are going to go as opposed to following the trends. So I'd rather write about something like TikTok, becoming more popular in search and how this could happen and this and that before it happens, as opposed to like being a me too when you're writing and publishing a news story and it being lost in the noise, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I think that would make a great story. Shall I get it assigned to you in Asana?
Yes, let's do it.
I'm the editor in chief. You have to. You have to do. um, cool. Well, you said you like doing the podcast. I'm very happy to hear that because it would be a little awkward if I were sitting here asking myself these questions. But with the roles reversed, you're usually the one doing the interviewing, and you have interviewed a lot of people, both for the podcast and I'm assuming for the original days of FCJ being a blog and you writing content for it. So I want to know, is there someone who stands out the most? Is there an interview you've done that had the biggest impact on your own career, your own growth, or even your own life?
Yes. So there are several. Um, I would say anything that we've done with Martin Split or basically the Google Webmaster team. I know he's not on that, but with Martin Split or anyone at Google has been cool, right? Because then we're
Yeah.
getting the information directly from the source. They're always limited in what they can share and what they can't, but just getting him on and his energy has always been good. Um, and then a couple that have really stuck out to me were, I had a really good interview with Syed Balki. He's the CEO of a company called Awesome Motive, and they own
Hmm.
almost every single WordPress plugin um, that's like all-in-one SEO, opt-in monster. They just almost every single WordPress plugin that marketers are using, they either own or have a version of. But a lot of that conversation went to how he built that up, right? Because he had started with a WordPress beginner blog and was doing tutorials, and then he just started either investing in or launching plugins as part of that, and then it just became the main business. So that was really good from an overall business perspective. And then I'd say some of my favorite shows are ones where we've invited just kind of like, I would say, like day-to-day marketers, especially in-house marketers, to come
Yeah.
on and talk about, how things are working from an enterprise perspective, how things are in-house. I really enjoy, even when I used to go to conferences a lot, I would really enjoy sitting in on the in-house or enterprise-oriented sessions, because as a consultant or agency rep, it gave me the ability to see like how people think and the challenges and struggles they have in-house, and better communicate that with clients and sales and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. How have those challenges evolved? Just from where you're sitting. How have those evolved over the years also?
Yeah, I would say that early on the goals were very traffic oriented, and then over the years, with more information from analytics and the ability to track sales and leads and things like that, having putting together business cases that are very ROI driven, right? I think that search has progressed from being of search traffic has progressed from being kind of a vanity metric. Oh, we're getting so many thousands of people clicking per day from Google on this term, yada yada yada. Let's go after high search volume, to being more so long tail and conversion driven. So putting the time into building business cases around not only what the ranking should be and what the traffic should be, but the return on the investment in this project should be long term, is something that's really grown from the in-house and enterprise side, and I think something that all consultants should focus on.
Yeah. Yeah. We're about like halfway through our hour long slot to chat, and I just wanted to pause really quickly to just say, if anybody who's watching has a question for Loren about 20 years of SEO or an SEJ, or like where to get the best tattoos in LA, like we can ask questions about that too. I'm sorry, is that okay, Loren? I should have asked you first,
Of course,
but
I don't know if mine are the best or not, but they're yeah, they stick out.
okay. So, or where not to get
We're not
the
good.
tattoos.
Yeah, I can tell you that.
Yeah. So I just wanted to, pause and let folks know, like, we can have a peek at your own questions as well. Um, but yeah, so we were just talking about editorial integrity not too long ago, and with a lack of integrity in general, when it comes to content, there are myths with any industry. There are myths, and so looking back at 20 years ago versus today, what were the biggest SEO myths then versus now?
Oh, that's good.
Thank you.
So I think the biggest myths to date have really been around things like keyword density, um, the amount of keywords that you should have on a page,
Mhm.
things like that. Did I just freeze for a second?
Your image did something weird, but I heard you.
Okay. So yeah, so like keyword density was a huge one early on, because what happened is like a tool would spit out something like, hey, here's your keyword density report, and you should add so many more keywords to reach the 100% level, to the point where it was just like stuffing words in, which didn't really, which didn't really turn out well for a lot of sites down the road. So I think that was a big myth. I think the other big myth is like SEO is dead. Like I've heard that so many times. The first time I heard someone say SEO is dead, I think it was like Jason Calacanis was speaking about his Mahalo content search engine at a search conference, and like that's how you start. That's a slide he started out with, doing a keynote to 1,000 SEOs in front of him, because he loves the shock value anyway. But I've heard that was like probably like 2005, 2006. Heard that every year since. And I just think one of the biggest myths is it's like SEO is going away. I know a lot of people are really scared right now with AI, right? With generative AI and Google rolling out SGE or whatever. And then also being utilizing, and I say whatever because these terms are going to change over time, what they call things. And then being utilizing ChatGPT and everything else. And the big thing is now, like, I'm beta testing generative AI in Google, and almost every query I do pushes down the page by the length of an article, right? So everyone seems to be freaking out about that. Oh, how's this going to impact traffic? How's this going to impact how's this going to impact this? And I think it's really important. But the good thing to remember is that the searcher at the end of the day is going to look for something. Like, we thought SEO was dead when Google started running ads. We thought SEO was dead when Google Shopping launched, when Google Local launched, everything else. It's still going to survive. It's going to transform a little bit. There's been many a metamorphosis over the past 20 years, and I think it's just going to continue.
Yeah, well, you kind of like stepped on the toes of my next question. And it seems like I was going to ask you, and forgive me everyone for asking this. I was going to ask, is SEO dead? And it sounds like that's the biggest myth today, is that SEO is dead. And again, you're the one answering the questions here, but just to add my 2 cents, because nobody asked for it, is I think, on the one hand, people are saying, well, there's nothing to optimize for if, you're having this generative conversational more approach to search and finding information. But I disagree with that. I think that optimization is going to look different, but it's not dead. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I was talking to someone actually yesterday about this, and basically they have a line of supplements, and they're like, you know what, when we search Google, we have all the Google results, we have Amazon on page 1, there's this on page 1, there's this on that on page 1 for, it's like omega-3 oil, right? So they're like, is this really going to help us? And then what I did was I showed them what the results were when someone searched for their brand name, when someone searched for their brand name and the word reviews, that is this brand legit, things like that. And what I showed them was that even when someone searched for their brand name, their Amazon store was above them. I'm like, listen, Amazon's getting X amounts of traffic from people that are already searching for your brand name. You rank number 2 for your brand name. You're losing 30% of every sale that you make via Amazon because of that, right? Here's what we can do to make that better. People are searching for the brand and the word reviews, right? They already know they want to buy a product. They're further down that path. They want to look at reviews. If your brand is not ranking in the top 3 for the brand name plus reviews, you're losing out there too, because people will go to another site and they will make a decision to go in a different direction. My point is that a lot of the time, I think we think of SEO as being an unbranded search endeavor, right? People that are just looking for keywords. But at the same time, there's so much more to it. People that are looking about your company, that are ready to buy, that are comparing your company to another company, that are comparing your pricing to another company's pricing. And the ability to optimize for all of that and make sure that your brand ranks for when people are doing those terms where they're in that decision maker part of the journey, right? Where they're about to buy,
Yeah.
it's so valuable and can be overlooked. And it's just one of the things where like that is SEO at the end of the day. How does your brand rank in the SERPs when people are searching for it? It's incredibly important. What image is showing up? What this is showing up? What that is showing up? Are there negative reviews showing up? How can you combat that? That's all part of SEO at the end of the day too. So I think because of that component, it's never going to be dead.
Yeah. Well, have you had a chance to really kind of get hands-on with SGE yet? The search generative
Uh,
experience?
yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
It's scary. I have to keep reminding myself that Google is beta testing this right now. Like it's not live.
Scary how?
Well, it's scary because of the way that it does push the results down. It's also scary because of I'm seeing a lot of the sourcing that's showing up in Google right now for SGE as being not the best sources, right? So you would think that
Mm,
Google would source the same kinds of sites that they rank for those terms. Well, I've seen so many spam pages and I don't know, just like paid listicles and stuff. Advertisements show up as sources when doing those searches. It's like they don't have it together yet. And then also the one thing that doesn't scare me about Google and the overall AI experience is that they did say they're going to roll it out in Q4 for shopping, travel, flights, things like that. Those are already um, types of searches that are dominated by Google itself, right? So you're searching for flight information, you find Google Flights. You're searching for travel information, it's different Google travel tools. You're searching for shopping on a product, you get Google Shopping results at the top, right? So that I already feel like that space is being utilized right now by Google to keep people within Google. We'll see how that grows, but I wouldn't be too scared from that component of it.
yeah. Well, while you were describing that, I actually was trying out Loren Baker as a query on the new SGE, and the first suggested follow-up question is Loren Baker obituary. So am I speaking to a ghost right now?
Maybe.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and the rearrangement of information is yeah, it's I don't know. It's going to be
It's just getting
interesting to
started.
watch. What's that?
It's just getting started. It's just
Yeah,
getting started.
right, right. What do you think? You know what? Never mind. We'll get to that later on, but because I want to make sure we keep the topic at hand, which is 20 years of SEJ and
Yeah.
celebrating that and not being like, are they going to regulate the AI, Loren? But that's again another episode. But 20 years later, what about and I feel like you may have answered this inadvertently through some of the other questions that I've asked you, but what about 2 decades of SEJ makes you the proudest?
It's a good question. Um, it makes me the proudest when I see that people are sharing our content and information without us having to ask them to. It makes me the proudest when I see, um, whoops, that's great timing. It makes me the proudest when I see that I've been to shows and conferences and there's people walking around with SEJ t-shirts on. Like that's super cool. And
Oh,
then it also like there's been times where I've worked with clients and I'll see like their CEO or CMO mass sending to everyone in marketing an article that we put on Search Engine Journal asking, "Oh, are you looking into this? Is this something that we're doing?" And then I'll just be like, "Yeah, of course, because it's our blog
yeah.
and our site."
uh, do you need to get the door?
I do. I need to take a quick intermission. So will you
All
entertain
right.
me for about 1 minute? I'll be right back.
All right. I have a repertoire of opera, of show tunes, of no, I'm just kidding. And I would never subject anybody watching to that. But if you do have any requests, feel free to put it in the comments. But yeah, if you are just now joining us, this is the Search Engine Journal or SEJ show. I'm Amanda Zantel Weiner. I'm the editor in chief of the Search Engine Journal, and thank you so much for being here. This is a very almost weird and special episode because I know Loren usually hosts these. Loren is usually on the other. Oh, and he's back.
I'm back.
I was just saying for people who tuned in that, we kind of switched the sides of the table that we're on because this is our very special 20th anniversary show. So just funny little reminder. Angie put in a request for me to recite my favorite Golden Girls moments while you were away.
Awesome.
So if you like, we have time. I could do that, or I could resume the interview.
Let's go. Let's move forward with the interview.
Okay. Did you have anything else you wanted to add to the? Well, wait a minute. Should I take that personally? You don't want to hear about my favorite Golden Girls moments? I'm kidding. Did you have anything you wanted to add to those moments that have made you the proudest over 20 years of SEJ?
It's just seeing it continue to grow. Like every time we have a meeting, something like that, I see like our team growing and
yeah,
everyone. Yeah, it's awesome.
We're doing our best to make you proud, Loren.
Thank you.
So what's next?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I'd like to see us get a little bit more into video. It's something we've tried many times over the years, but I think it's just becoming more and more important, especially with, AI results and everything else, and just like the ways that people digest their information now, right? Like we were talking about Reels earlier and YouTube Shorts and things like that. Like if it's not just kids anymore, it's everyone is digesting all of their information, utilizing Reels and videos that they're finding on YouTube or more so Instagram and TikTok, and just being part of that conversation. There's so many other people that do it right now that's so well in the world of marketing, but being part of that conversation is extremely important.
Yeah. It's because we have this conversation a lot, and it's it's something that you do still have to have a strategy behind it, just because it's not necessarily high production value. It still has to be strategic. But I think that having the plethora of content and information that we do at least serves a good foundation for us to do more, media content. It's something I think we would all love to do. But what's next for Loren Baker?
Oh, I don't know. I guess hopefully retire in 20 years or just keep things going. Like the one thing I do love about this industry is that it's always changing.
Yep.
So I just love staying on top of everything that's happening in search and tech and everything else. So I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. Going to continue to help to grow this puppy.
We should ask or create the generative AI Loren bot, like the Ask Loren bot. Like if anybody has a question about SEO or about like running an SEO publication for 20 years, I think we should have a generative AI chatbot that is just Loren in AI form.
We should. Let's do it.
What would your chatbot's name be? Ideally, would just be Loren, just the Loren bot.
Yeah.
Baker bot.
Tio Lorenzo. I'm not sure. We'll go for it.
Tio Lorenzo. Okay. All right. Let's copyright that. If any of our PMs or anything are watching this, let's get the paperwork started on that. I am going to go to some of our audience questions now. Well, actually, before I do that, Loren, is there anything that I didn't ask you about, 20 years of SEO and SEJ that you really want to talk about, or you really want people to know, that you want me to know?
Oh, I would say the interesting thing is, I guess about 20 years of SEJ is that like, just like I said, like keep going, right? Like early on had so many people questioning like, oh, like that's not, how can you build a profitable endeavor publishing every day? It's not like a product where you're just selling it over and over again. And just so many people like, how do you do that? How do you wake up first thing in the morning and try to cover this news before everyone else? And I say that just the one thing is just like, keep it going. Just like going, keep pushing, because it's going to happen. Like at first we were a 2-figure blog, I guess. Yeah. 2 figures, $35. And then 3, then 4, then 5, then 6. And then as the site has grown into a company, there were many times where it's been really easy to just stop or just say, oh, I'm so tired of blogging, I don't want to do it anymore. But just keeping going, and longevity. Just yeah, I think it all adds up at the end of the day.
Yeah. Would you agree that you don't necessarily, especially when it comes to news, because we have done so much work on reinventing how we approach news. And I've only been with the company for a little over a year, and I think that my philosophy has been you don't necessarily have to be the first to be the best to cover the news. And that kind of goes back to what you were saying about from the very beginning you've carried a philosophy and an approach of why it matters.
Yeah.
And how it's actionable. So it's hard, because it's like somebody at Google sneezes and a million, but we can't always be the first to pick it up. And so, how is that, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a good point. It's there's a lot of noise that happens, right? There's a lot of publishing. I mean, that's the thing about like companies talking about, or the whole concept of utilizing AI to write an article or to write something quickly and stuff like that. Anyone can get a news story out there instantly. If you look at the AP, they'll get a news story out there instantly. It's on thousands of sites and it just goes away. Just the ability to take time and review something that's happening and then get into, again, dig it down deep, why it's important, what you can do with this, how you can apply this to your day-to-day strategy.
Yeah.
I think is important. And what we've seen by doing that is that some of the stories that we've done at SEJ that have been news stories have ended up being evergreen pieces that people go back to and go back to and go back to over and over again. So it's also the ability to pick up what's taken off, what's gotten the links, what's gotten viral, and then build from there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that makes for a good multimedia strategy as well, which is an interesting thing that you bring up, because there was an audience question. It's I'm gonna rephrase the question a little bit. So my apologies to the original asker. A topic like SEO, many might consider that a little bit on the drier end. Now, I know you and I would never describe it that way, but some people who maybe don't work in our industry or aren't as hands-on with it and in the trenches of it day to day, they might think of it as like a less exciting, less sexy topic. So, and we do, consumers, this person who asked this question pointed out that the market by and large has a pretty short attention span. So, looking back at some of the things that you've said about what has made SEJ successful and what has made SEJ last this long, how do you, what's your advice on creating content around a topic that maybe might be a little less sexy to the market?
I think, early on, I worked with some companies they wanted to start blogs, but they were very afraid to start a blog because they didn't think that they had anything to talk about, right? And a lot of these companies were somewhat boring industries like plastics fabrication or like vinyl siding or whatever. But one is like just starting, right? Because you can always become the industry leader in your industry, no matter how large or small your industry is, especially if you're an industry that's not tech driven. It's easier to stand out. There's been multiple different like pest control sites that have like taken off, multiple this, multiple that, from a blogging perspective. But putting together the best content around your company or around your industry is incredibly important, but also keeping in mind people do digest content in different ways, right? So you can do more than putting together a list or putting together a table or whatever, just turning that into a graphic that's shareable, revisiting older pieces of content, adding video embeds and things like that are going to keep people around on the site. And then, like I said, things that are evergreen, making sure that you're constantly revisiting that content, updating it, making sure that your sources are updated. You don't want to source a study that came out in 2016, because then Google's going to see that that content that you're sharing is not fresh, or source a study that came out in 2000, right? What you want to do is make sure that there's more study, there's more sources, there's more citations that are more recent or more relevant, making sure that you're updating your pieces accordingly. and just constantly revisiting that content, I just think it's incredibly important, because you can take what you've originally invested into it, right, which is your base, what you're getting back, but just spending time maybe once a month, once a quarter, even once a year, just updating a little bit at a time is really going to help from a freshness perspective. And then
Yeah.
again, trends change. So how can I make sure that my content is relevant to the way that people are digesting content right now?
Yeah, exactly. While it might be, a market with a short attention span, there is a market for it. And if you can create the most compelling content for the person who's in that, discovery phase, I think that kind of firms up exactly what you said.
Yes.
So thank you for that. I hope that the person who asked that question, that answers your question. So just we have 10 minutes left. We can talk about baseball, but I also would like to make sure I get to a couple of the other audience questions.
Let's go.
This is similar to a question that I asked you earlier, but I kind of think it's a little bit more less within the four walls of SE Joe. SE Joe. SE. That's our chatbot.
Yes.
SEO. So outside of the four walls of SEO and SEJ, over the 20 years of doing this, what is it about that experience that has changed the way, not just you look at SEO or at the industry, but it's changed the way you've just done things in general or viewed the world?
What about the SEJ experience has changed the way I view the world?
Mm-hmm. That was an audience question. That was from Angie. I can't take credit for that one.
I would say that the one thing about the SEJ experience has changed the way I view work is that you don't have to do this same thing all the time. You can always delegate and have team members work on things and stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the other thing too is like knowing that over the past 20 years, met a lot of people from different parts of the world, different cultures, different languages, and things along those lines. But the one common denominator is that everyone's doing SEO for Google, and they're doing it in the same fashion, right? So I think to a degree, it might sound cheesy, but I think by practicing, whether you want to call it a job skill or an arts or whatever it may be, that and the ability to connect with people from those different cultures and things like that has been pretty amazing. Like I can reach out to SEO consultants in Japan, in Germany, in Pakistan, India, the Philippines, Thailand, wherever it may be, Indonesia, and I've just met so many people that you can just go back and forth with. But again, you have that common denominator of doing the same, of spending your days trying to make your craft better.
Yeah. That's pretty beautiful when you explain it that way, because the search for information, the quest to find information and to learn is kind of the universal language.
Yep.
That's why we have books. That's why we have, I think we still have some libraries left, but that's why we exist, is this quest to connect and find information. And so I think that that's really interesting. And I think that, inadvertently, by you answering that question, that's going to change the way, my experience, not, in this industry over the years, I think that I didn't even realize what you just said. It's changed the way I've viewed the world as well. So you know what? I think that that's a really nice place to conclude. And Loren, this has been awesome. I've learned, so much from you today, but also just from working for SEJ. And I'm honored to be here, and I'm really, really feel privileged to be celebrating this landmark with you today. So thank you for everything. And I know I'm just drinking lime seltzer, but I would still like to raise my glass to the next 20 years of SEJ, Loren, and to
Right.
you.
Here's some water. So likewise, happy birthday, Search Engine Journal, 20 years.
Yes. Happy anniversary and congratulations. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. We're both on Twitter if you have any follow-up questions that we didn't get to today, but I really appreciate everybody tuning in to celebrate and learn from Loren with me. So Thanks again, Loren, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Of course. And since you're hosting, are you going to do the outro? Are you going to do the outro reel?
I am not going to do the outro reel because I've never done the outro reel before.
Right,
so you know what? You can do that.
I'll do it. Let me see if I can find it. Okay,
Take it away.
ready? You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bye.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Search Engine Journal Show. If you liked this episode, subscribe to our channel for so much more and click the notification bell so you don't miss a thing.